Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riding from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelsen, and I'm a professional horse trainer. And with me is not only Deb Romero, certified Alexander Technique instructor, but also my cat, Lily, has decided to be at the bottom of the screen today. So
Yes.
if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see the cat ears going up and
Up
down
and
in the
down.
screen. But if you're watching on YouTube, that's what that black dot is at the bottom of my screen moving. Um, so today's topic, what was it we had? Exploring while training horses is today's topic.
Hmm.
And sort of going into what that means. And it just started with a random thought of sort of instead of thinking as like, take, for example, lunging is a training technique, right?
Right.
And when we use training techniques with horses, we tend to think we're either going to make the horse do it or teach the horse to do it or help them figure out. But what
We
if we
think we're
turn,
so smart.
I know humans think they're so smart. So the idea of the topic today is what if we spent a portion of our training time actually observing, asking
Mm.
questions, trying to read responses, and just exploring. So instead of getting attached to our agenda for the day, because horses have a way of putting a monkey wrench in our plans all the time, what if we sort of took that monkey wrench and went, because you say this all the time, isn't that interesting?
I do say that all the time. Isn't that
That's a
interesting?
Debism. Isn't,
Debism.
yeah, isn't that
Okay.
interesting?
Isn't that interesting? Instead of losing my
Wrong.
cork.
Right. Or instead of getting frustrated and going, you're not doing it
Exactly.
right. Yeah.
Or what is the horse trying to tell me?
That's the kind of question I
Yeah,
mean.
what
Like
am I missing?
when,
Because if I'm struggling, then why am I struggling? Look at it instead of trying to force something.
yeah. Or like, I had a client I worked with, and her horse has this terrible habit of banging on the stall door. And he has navicular in the hoof he prefers to bang with too. So this is like not good, right? So a lot of horses will bang the stall doors for food anxiety. And my horse Rafalco had that habit when he came to me. And over time, it's gotten less and less and less. We've been working through it. But that's more related to food anxiety.
Right.
And so all the strategies we tried with my client's horse weren't really working. The banging wasn't getting
Hmm.
any less. And she finally mentioned today, she goes, I think he just wants attention because
Ah,
even though he had hay, he just got fed. As soon as we took the other horse out to work the other horse in the arena, he starts banging. And I
oh,
went, isn't that interesting that, in most cases, it's related to food anxiety. So if you give them food, the banging stops. But in his case, whether he had food or didn't have food, the banging was pretty incessant. And so she kind of realized he would be happier if he were out with us. That's what he wants. But this
right.
has taken months and months and months to
For the
just
human to figure
for
out.
the human to go, he wants attention. And so all those strategies that she's tried, like she's tried squirting him with a spray bottle of water, she's tried sort of, pushing him off the stall door with a broom or something and just saying, hey, quit doing that and correcting him. But even negative attention is giving him the
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
And so when things go sideways or horses habitually do things we don't like, if we, like, I kind of made the assumption it was food anxiety. And that's what took a while was she figured out by just being observant to when he was doing it, when does it come up? She goes, he wants attention. That's the problem.
Interesting. I
And as
I
soon
think
as we,
we don't spend that much time just observing. I mean, I'm fortunate where I am. I have a panoramic view of most of my paddocks, so I
mm,
can even observe from inside.
Hmm.
But just arriving at the barn and observing horse behavior, I think is very educational.
Really educational because the
Yeah.
more you observe, which is how we listen to horses, I think the first human instinct when the horse is doing something that drives us crazy
Mhm.
is to punish. And my client went through that. That didn't work. Then the step above punishment is interrupting and redirecting, which is a little more humane way of
Mhm.
thinking about it. Well, that didn't work either. So then it's like sort of peeling back the layers. You try different strategies. And if nothing is sort of turning the behavior around or helping the horse change their movement, we kind of have to look at maybe I don't understand
Mhm.
the horse's motivation for the behavior. Right. And
Right.
so I go, it's pretty easy. Horses want to feel safe and want to feel comfortable. And then from there, we can refine it. So maybe it was related to him feeling insecure when the other horse was out of the barn,
Yeah.
but him wanting that attention, I go, is that related to safety or comfort? I don't know. But I thought she nailed it on the head that this horse, even if it's negative attention, he's happy. So
Wow.
that completely changed our strategy. And I said, if he's got food and water, maybe when he starts to bang the stall door, take him out of the stall and out of the little paddock where he could kick on the back door to the stall
Oh my gosh.
and put him in that pasture that's even farther away from us and see what he does. And she goes, well, he'll probably start running. He might lose a shoe. And I go, well, then you kind of have to decide
Hmm.
which one do you think you can cope with better until he's figuring this out? But if you really think the stall banging is bad for his foot, destroying your property, and you're not finding a way to help it change, maybe running around and losing a shoe is the safer option.
Mm.
And sometimes you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, but you're not going to get everything perfect. There's always got to be a little bit of give and take because the problem lives inside of him and he's got to work it out.
Right. Do you think that those kind of things have to do with trying to come up with a good coordination and balance? If you don't feel secure in your own skin,
Hmm.
it being a herd animal, being alone is like the biggest
Well,
enemy.
you have three factors, and this maybe will help trigger the thought of exploration because when something comes up, whether
Right.
it's related to physical performance,
Hmm.
lameness, or a behavior issue, when anything comes up, horses have great memories. So there's one part of the equation that could be a memory and a habit, right?
Mm.
Because it's worked for them in the past. But
Ah,
basically, behavior is repeated because it's getting them what they want. That's why it's repeated. We do the same thing
we do the
when
same
we get what it,
habitual,
yeah,
right.
when we get what we want from a certain behavior, we repeat the behavior. Sorry, Lily
Hmm.
is like moving my
Moving the screen.
moving the screen here. You can sit on my lap, Lily. So there's the memory or habit, right? And horses have great memories, so they tend to have very strong habits, very ingrained habits when something has worked for them. Now she's going to pull my microphone off. I'm going to duct
Special
tape her to
cat.
the wall next
Yep.
time. So the essential instinctual needs are to feel safe and physically comfortable, which means good coordination during work, right? Or physically comfortable enough that they're not in chronic low grade discomfort, which
Hmm.
can affect behavior. So those three things are kind of like, juggling balls in the air. And when I meet a horse or I'm trying to resolve a problem, is it the habit ball? Is it the safety, I don't feel safe
I don't feel
ball? Or
safe or
is
I'm
it
not.
the I don't
Mhm.
feel comfortable ball? And usually when I start, all three are a factor. Like I can see
Right.
pieces of all three. So I go, well, which one is really making the problem persist? And
Hmm.
so to me, half of what I do in training is detective work. I go, I'm kind of
What is
trying,
this?
yeah, I'm trying to understand what's motivating or driving the response I keep getting from the horse. And as soon as it can take a while, like being a detective or a sleuth, it can take a little while to put the clues together. And then you have an idea, but then you're wrong. So then you have another
Yeah.
idea, but then you're wrong, right? And so that sleuthing out
Hmm.
of, I go, it's somewhere in one of those three categories, or there's a piece in each category, and it's a combination of two or all three. But I go, how can we sort of look at it from here? Do we need to change the habit or do we need to address him feeling safer? And like you said, probably with people too, improving coordination as a new habit of movement that we're using every single day, all day.
Right.
It's a very powerful part of training, whether it's human or horse, because it makes people and horses feel safer in their own skin and gives you something better to do than an old negative habit.
Yeah, and for me, from the Alexander perspective, we don't see anything as right or wrong. Because as humans, we can make things very black and white, and we throw that kind of thought to our horse.
Hmm.
And I, I, I maybe we as humans need to reevaluate that because in
Yeah,
our world,
because
there's no right or wrong. There is no postural place. There's just an exploration of how am I using myself during this activity?
right.
Yeah,
And that's exactly it. I look at all behavior that horses offer and kind of, unconscious responses that they have to anything I do. And that is the communication with a horse who's not going to speak verbally to you.
right.
So it really gets you out of the land of obedience and submission and punishment and
Big
dominance.
words. Hmm.
It's like that's still such a prevalent part of the horse business.
Yeah,
But I go, if we just look at it as the horse is trying to communicate something, right?
right.
Because
Yeah,
they don't have words. I go, they have some sounds, but mostly horses communicate through behavior.
it's an expression. Yeah. And
Hmm.
I've seen it even with people when I'm working with them. The expression will change, or because they're verbal, I'll say, "Well, what do you think about what we just did?" And I'll get, "I don't know." And I
Yeah.
love that. I love that because that means they're not in their habit.
Yeah,
That
they're
they've
suddenly in a I
a
don't
different
know
place. I
state.
don't know. I don't know what this is. And I'm like, "Yay."
Yeah,
Or
because only once we sort of get in an unfamiliar space can we see options that we were never on our radar before.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
the
sort of
whole,
like
yep,
thinking it was a food anxiety, me making that assumption about her horse. We were kind of, none of the strategies we were choosing were working for her horse, but they were working for my horse because my horse paws and bangs on the stall
interesting.
and has very similar behavior,
Hmm.
right? And what the strategies I've adopted with my horse have been working. So that was the first thing I said, here's a whole list of things you can do. It's been working for my guy. Try this. And none of it was really working. And
Hmm.
then because she's with her horse more than I am, she's the one who finally realized he wants attention. It's not related to food. Even
Wow.
though it looks like it's related to food and it's typical of food anxiety behavior, he's motivated in a completely different way to do the same behavior. And I go, that's why we don't have a cookie cutter recipe for every problem a horse can throw at us because sometimes the motivation for the very same behavior is really different.
Right. And it's that exploration of asking the question, just being in a question instead of thinking you always have to have an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's some like we could take something so simple if we put it in human terms. And let's say getting in the car and driving off your property is a task, right?
Mhm.
So every single human can do that at a different speed in a different way with little
Mhm.
different, do I back up first? Do I pull forward first? Am I in a garage? Is it outside? Do I need to scrape the ice off my window? There's a gazillion variables within that simple
Mhm.
task of getting in your car and exiting your property. And then I go, there's also like, why? Why are you getting in your car and leaving your property? So not only are there a gazillion ways to do the same task,
Right.
every person has a maybe vastly different motivation for getting in the car and driving off the property. Maybe it's an errand, maybe, we're late, maybe somebody had an emergency, maybe we're going to go see an old friend. Like there's so many different motivations that sort of influence even the way we go get in the car and drive out the driveway.
And that's very interesting you brought that up because it really comes down to thought patterns that I was working with a new student about that. And the pause is so critical, just taking that moment to just stop and
Mm.
reevaluate and see what information comes to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. About, I had one of my teachers said, you can always have a goal when you go to teach, but always be willing to listen to what the student needs.
Yes, because the response to me gives me the details of how to train a horse.
Ah,
And I got no idea how any person on the planet or any horse is going to respond, even if I'm consistent. E-
exactly.
Even if I'm the consistent, I give this cue, I want you to do that. It
And
doesn't
we think
mean,
we think it's linear. We think it goes in a straight line
well,
because
and if
that's
you if you take the example of how many different reasons why we get in the car, drive off the property, and all the different ways we can get that simple task done,
that,
I go, that to me, when I look at lunging or working on long reins or improving transitions or improving the horse's balance or improving steering under saddle, I go, that's just getting in your car and exiting your property. That's all that is, right? And I have no idea exactly what's motivating the horse to respond the way the horse is responding. So that's where I go. It's more like being a detective, or when it comes to coordination, I go, it's kind of like being a mechanic. You have to
mm,
get in there and figure out why the brakes or the accelerator or the steering or the suspension are not quite working, right?
yeah,
What's wrong with the alignment? Why are the tires rattling? Well, why
it's
is the
because you
horse
ran
moving
into the
this way?
curb. But we forget about
Yeah.
that. We don't we forget about those little layers of memory
Yeah, and that's
that
where
are
habit
that
comes in.
influence what we do, what we think. Yeah.
Yeah, because by the time a horse is 2 years old and by the time a human is a teenager, we've already established very strong neural pathways
Mhm.
regarding habitual coordination, habitual behavior, habitual responses, and they've all now become unconscious. Maybe we're not even aware that those are
Most of it
optional.
is unconscious, yes.
Yeah, because it just becomes our pattern of how life sort of shaped us. And to improve coordination, improve behavior, we have to change unconscious habits. That's autopilot, that's the default setting. And so the first step is we have to be aware of what the habits are
Hmm.
before we can change them. Just like this horse banging on the stall door, I go,
Right.
okay, we're aware.
Hello.
We're aware, and it definitely drives the owner crazy, and we need to change it.
Hmm.
Right? So once that decision, that awareness was there, the decision to change it was now the next step. Now we have to implement strategies, but the strategies are only going to be effective if we also sort of figure out the motivation without the horse telling us, hey, I need attention, right? So
Right.
we're going to get it wrong a lot
A
before we
lot.
figure it out. Yeah,
And us humans hate to be wrong.
hate it. Yeah.
We hate it.
And the
And
easiest thing to do is say the horse should. And I go, good luck with that.
it's kind of like one of my horses in trailer loading was not food motivated.
Yeah,
So,
that speaks of fear of the trailer. If a horse
yeah,
won't get in a
so
trailer for food, it's a fear issue. I go, that's so easy to sort out.
right.
And
But
it's like my horse, the strategy for the pawing and the banging on the stall door was when I go in every time before I feed him, I get him to just, I pet him on the forehead, I kiss him on the nose, I give him a little bit of attention, and then I give him his food. And it just brings things down a notch. And
right,
I go, but with this other horse, that strategy wasn't working at all.
that wasn't it.
Mm-mm.
And then it's like, do we have enough tools in our tool belt, ideas to pick from? Where do we have to look elsewhere on other ideas, or are we willing to ask other people for help?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we're going to exhaust our own kind of either instinctual, intuitive, or learned responses. And it's
Hmm.
like my client kind of exhausted herself trying
Hmm.
to discourage, redirect, or punish the behavior. And the
Right.
horse is like, so?
That's not it. That's not the
Yeah,
answer.
she's getting tired and frustrated, and he's
Right.
not changing at all because he's like, you would have to be here all the time to do that. So he figured out as soon as she's at a certain distance, he can just start up again. So she's the one wasting the energy, and the problem is not changing.
Right.
But we have to repeat that X number of
I don't know
times.
why we do
I
that.
know.
Why do we do that? Why
We have
it
to repeat
because
it.
we think we're smarter, maybe? Of course this will work. I'm the
Yeah.
human. I don't
Or
know.
it's sort of like, what did they say about, when the US got hit on 9/11? They said basically our agencies had a failure of imagination. And I
Hmm.
go, that's sort of what I see is often it's just a failure of imagination. And I think when I have come up with the most creative strategies intuitively and they ended up working, I got to say, 9 times out of 10, it's because I could finally see what was motivating the horse to do what they were doing.
That's a good point. So it's kind of like peeling our own layers
Hmm.
and actually wiping our own slate, saying, I don't know. Let me just watch
Yeah.
and
And
learn from that.
when most people say, why is he banging the stall door? It's like the message behind those words is usually, why is he being naughty and bad? Right? And so I go, that's that I can't really answer, but let's actually just change the energy of the same question and go, why is he doing that?
Mhm.
Rather than like, why is he doing that to me? Or why is he being so
And
naughty?
we take it personal. We
Yeah,
really do.
because it
Yeah.
drives us crazy.
Yeah.
And
But I
so,
wonder if we admitted that this is driving me crazy. Obviously, it's not driving the horse crazy, or. So why am I so upset about this is a really good place to be, is in the question.
Well, it's like you say to get your balance when you're riding. You say something pretty frequently, are all my joints open and available?
Hmm.
And to me, is my mind, is my curiosity open and
Oh, good
available?
one. Yep.
Because it can be mental as well as physical. So to get our balance, my first question is, am I being curious or am I going in there
Hmm.
trying to fix the problem? Right? Which is, I go, that's what I do. So that's where I tend to catch myself making mistakes the most
Mm.
is I make these assumptions like I did with my client's horse,
Yep.
and then we're on the wrong strategy for a while. And I forget. And I think the more you know, the more you forget that you need to be curious. You need to get back to that beginner's mind who
There's a
at
book
least,
called that.
yeah, and it's
Hmm.
true because in an expert's mind, I catch myself that I think I know the reason. And
I was going to bring that up. The Beginner's Mind. I'm going to write it down. I got to reread that book.
I know I should read that. We could do a podcast on it because it really
Let's do.
is. I
I
think
have it somewhere.
I think the one thing I've learned the most from horses because they are highly adaptable
Hmm.
by instinct, right? They're prey animals. They live in a herd. So the social structure and the adaptability kind of flabbergasts me. Like it is almost beyond what humans can comprehend. And over and over and over, it's like just when I think I know a thing or two, the next horse that shows up is going to either show me how little I know or make a liar out of me because I thought I knew. And they're like, yeah, that's not it. And
And I think
so,
that's why it makes it difficult for people to stay with us. Does that make sense? Because I feel perfectly comfortable saying I don't know. I don't.
I
And
had to
people
get
are like, "Well, what am
really,
I paying you for?"
and I go, the other answer is it depends.
It depends, and I
Uh,
don't know. Those are the
yeah,
that's what I hear from my greatest mentors. That's what they say.
it
It depends,
depends.
and I
And I
don't
don't,
know.
yeah. And the truth behind that is what we're talking about. The task is get in your car and exit your property. So the I don't know could be how are you, Deb, as an individual going to do that? How am I going to do it as an individual? And why are you doing it today at this time? And why am I doing it today at
Right,
this time? And all of that changes. Like I go, that's life. It's so I don't know why you got in your car today and drove off your property, and I don't know how you did it. I don't know how much
right,
you relied on habits, or if something happened that interrupted your process and you had to do something different, or your car wouldn't start, or your tire was flat. It's like there's just so many variables that the only real honest answer sometimes is I don't know. Let's get curious and figure it out, or
hmm
try to figure it out, or it depends. How
hmm
how you get in your car today depends if it's raining or if it's snowing or if it's wicked hot outside or if you have a flat
Or if I
tire
stubbed my toe, or
or yeah, or you slammed your hand in the car door,
yeah,
right?
I
It's
mean,
like
there's so many variables. I think once we open that door of exploration, and I feel like we do that with horses, and I certainly do it with people, is it can be overwhelming.
yeah.
It
And
really
I
can.
think people are still very much with horse training. It's like people ask me all the time, how do I sit the trot? How do I do
Hmm.
a shoulder in? How do I do
Hmm.
a shoulder four? How do I do a flying change? How do I get my horse to go on a trail ride? And all of those to me, I go, I could put in get in your car and exit your property for any one of those as a
Right.
task, but I go the same thing, whether it's Tempe changes or getting your horse in a trailer.
Hmm.
I go, those are just get in your car, drive up, drive down your driveway. It's like, so how is the horse responding to the request and the communication? What's motivating the horse? Is this a habit? Does the horse feel unsafe? Is this creating more discomfort so the horse is resisting because they're physically not comfortable or don't feel safe in their own skin?
Hmm.
Or it's a habit that's so ingrained that it's going to take a while because it's
Oh,
just an
wow.
ingrained habit.
That's huge. It's going to take a while. And
Mhm.
I had an experience in Alexander School with a master teacher, and she asked me to put hands on her low back while she was getting in and out of a chair. And here's a teacher, with more than 30 years experience, and she actually tightened her low back as she got up and she looked at me and she said, "Did I just do that?"
Yeah, you
I said,
did.
"I think you did."
Yeah.
So the habit, to me, in my experience, is always available.
Well, even if you look at human habits like drinking, right? And drinking starts to destroy your life. Look at how long people stay in AA and how much support and help they need to
Good
change
point.
that habit. Or NA for narcotics or drugs, or quitting smoking, and how many gadgets and gum and everything else patches
Right.
there to help with the physical transition, or dieting, or getting off sugar, or trying to lose weight, or trying to build muscle. It's like those habits, even for very complex human brains, take a while to change. That's what a
Hmm.
habit is. Even even though we can intellectually know that
Right.
if we don't change that habit, it is hurting us,
Right.
right? It's still hard to change.
Exactly.
And horses are actually faster, like
I think
way
you're
faster
right.
at
I
changing
think they're
habits.
much faster to adapt
Hmm.
and be willing to accept or try. Or what I've also found is if I ask a question of a horse to explore something different and they go no, well, maybe I just need to wait with that question and ask it again later.
Ask it in a different way,
Ask in a
or
different way,
ask on
or
another day,
yeah,
or wait 3 minutes and ask again, or three
exactly.
seconds and ask
Or,
again.
maybe they don't believe us.
Well, in
I
one
had,
habit, when working in rehab, it's not, it's sadly common. It's not uncommon that horses have an automatic defensive reaction
oh,
to things that people are asking because they've been punished in the past, because they've experienced pain, because they've gotten in trouble. And what that does is it really doesn't resolve the underlying issue and make the doesn't develop the horse you wanted,
right.
right? It actually has a tendency to now add habits of defensiveness on top of the original problem.
Hmm.
That's what punishment and demanding obedience tend to do because we're not even trying to understand why they're doing it or what's the motivation.
Yeah, so for me, I don't know why this popped in my head, but I mean, what do we consider punishments? I mean, I'm looking at I think using things like side reins and stuff like that. Where are we going with that?
Well, anything that inflicts pain, I
Okay.
consider punishment.
Okay.
But I go, you can inflict pain with a whip, or you can use a whip without inflicting pain,
Good point.
right?
Hmm.
And I go, if you understand a horse's skin sensitivity, there's not a lot of ways to use spurs gently, so I just don't wear them. But some people feel If I just have the spurs on, my horse goes better, but I never really use them like a whip, right? So I go, okay, let's put that in the realm of possibilities.
Mhm.
So you can use spurs and make a horse bleed and use
That's true.
spurs to inflict pain. You can use bits to inflict pain,
Good point.
right? Some saddles can inflict pain. And I go,
Right.
and sometimes we don't know it's inflicting pain. So we're punishing the horse every time we ride if our tools are inflicting pain. I go, that to me
Right.
is the easiest definition of punishment.
Okay.
And again, so much of it has to do with how we think because
Exactly.
there's other horses that are going to push the boundaries, like
Mhm.
the Bart Simpsons of the horse world. And if horses don't understand consequences of certain behaviors, then they don't learn,
Mhm.
right? And so if it's a consequence or it's a interruption of dangerous behavior, sometimes an interruption can be firm, but I'm not trying to inflict pain. I'm trying to stop something dangerous happening,
Right. And
right?
that it's a whole nother podcast, but it's amazing to me um how people think that writing is the only thing that matters
That
instead of
actually came up. I have a client who has, because of her last horse, has sort of lost her confidence and has a little bit
Mhm.
of fear of riding. And she found a very nice youngish horse, and he's a little on the green side. So we're sort of working through his foundation, doing
Mhm.
groundwork where she's confident and looking for sort of be able to check the box on certain things he's showing us in the groundwork to know that she's going to be safer and can work on herself when she rides.
Right.
And what came up the other day, because in the process with an unconfident rider, and this horse has random spooks and blow ups and some unsafe behavior that just pops up once in a while. He's mostly a good horse, but there's these
Right.
things. And in her mind, she goes, I can't ride that. And I go,
Mm.
no, the point is that that's worked out on the ground. So that's not the horse you ride. And that was a little bit of an epiphany because we think
Mhm.
if the horse is a spooky horse, they're going to spook whether we're doing groundwork or riding. And to me, I go, no, we're doing groundwork to build the horse's sense of self-confidence, feeling safe, feeling comfortable, breaking bad habits so that you're not getting on a horse that's likely to do that under saddle.
And that's a really good point. And we mentioned it at the beginning, exploring just behavior of the herd, or isn't that interesting? My horse won't stand still when I'm putting the saddle on, or isn't, or in the cross ties, or for
Right,
the farrier, or whatever.
right.
It's like there's a fundamental thing missing when those things, and just like her, I wouldn't want to ride that horse if it doesn't know how to stand, how on the ground, how to do
Right.
all these things that I feel creates safety.
No, and the project she's been working on with this horse is on a lunge line in a halter. We finally kind of gave up on the trot and canter work because his posture was really compromised.
Mm,
So, where he can have better physical coordination for now is in the walk. So, the task we came up with, or the objective, is walk to the right for 20 minutes, walk to the left for 20
mm.
minutes without blowing up, without stopping. He had been charging her at one point.
Yay.
He had been pulling the lunge line out of her hand, and I go, that's not a horse you're going to be safe to ride. This is what we're working out.
Right.
And I said, until a horse, it should be the biggest no-brainer for a horse to walk on a lunge line without stopping, without blowing up, without trying to, get out of the job by looking at you and going, can we stop now? Or without the
Hmm.
horse going, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Are we
I
done
get that
yet?
all the
Like,
time. It's like, no,
like just walk, a rhythmic
just
walk on a reasonably shaped circle for 20 minutes to the right, 20 minutes to the left. And I go, that to me is just checking off a box to
Right.
go, this horse is showing me 3 sessions in a row. That was so easy for the horse to do. At least I know that horse is safe to ride. I go, it's not fancy, it's not spectacular,
No.
but sometimes when I give people that simple task to start with,
Mhm.
it's like everything comes up in the process that you have to work through.
Mhm.
And I go, that's not a horse you want to be sitting on yet if you're an unconfident rider.
Right.
I go, if you're a confident rider, maybe you go, I can deal with that. But if you have fear issues as a rider, you better make sure you're checking off all your boxes for your horse
Mhm.
so that you are safer in order to work on yourself when you get
Right.
on. And I
And
go,
that exploration and I'm my horse won't stand for the farrier or whatever. I mean, those are tasks that the box needs to be checked before I get on. If
yeah,
I don't,
or when I'm helping bridge the gap between a horse and a rider, that's where I take horses in training,
hmm
is if there's fear issues, safety issues, big physical issues, or we need to bridge the gap between the person and the horse. And what I look at is I learned through all these years, the best way to sometimes serve the owner is to overtrain their horse on the ground. Like
hmm
develop them to the point that the horse feels so safe and so comfortable that they don't need their old habits as often or they're not as intense
right,
and build in a margin of error for the human. Here, you're going to have your learning curve and the horse has their learning curve. But because horses change habits faster than humans,
hmm
sometimes I go, let's just overdo this horse feeling safe and comfortable with whatever we're doing so that the horse can help you out a little bit. I said it won't last
right.
long term. It's not going to mean your horse will tolerate you not changing
Yeah,
because
and
it's dynamic.
that exploration of we don't realize that our level of knowledge and their level of knowledge, where are we with that?
Yeah, and it's a dance couple.
Yeah.
I go, if you guys want to dance together, you both got to learn your own steps, right? And if you don't learn the steps or if the steps are creating discomfort or learning the steps is making you feel unsafe, this is not going to work.
Not for today, no.
It's not
No.
going to be a beautiful dance if we don't have two good dancers working in harmony.
And, in the beginning, it can be pretty ugly and messy.
Just like training people dancers. I
Yeah,
go
it
that,
it
yeah,
can just be that being willing to ask the questions, explore, and not fear failure
yeah.
is huge to me with horses. Instead of thinking it has to be that linear progression, which we want, the human wants that, but the horse doesn't think that way.
Yeah. So, like when I'm training horses, another one of my boxes to tick when I am evaluating a horse or going through training, rehabbing, a very simple box to tick is what I call the four basic aids. So, if I give a light leg aid, does the horse go forward? Right? If I give a light rein aid, does the horse slow down or halt? If I use a right rein, do I get a right turn? If I use the left rein, do I get a left turn? Do you know how many horses can't do those
Oh
four
my gosh.
simple aids?
Wow. I never thought of it that way.
And
Yeah.
my leg aid sort of means like my leg isn't on constantly. Like to me, a leg aid is a request, and
hmm
part of the horse's dance steps is move until the next direction,
Right.
right? So sometimes I give a leg aid and the horse goes backwards. Sometimes I give a leg aid and the horse takes half a step and stops. Right? Or they take 10 steps and stop. And I go, stopping's okay, But what that shows me is you don't fully grasp that the leg aid is to say, dance this way until further notice.
And what's interesting is you don't know, say you've bought a horse, that came from somebody else. You don't know that past of,
Well, my horse, Rafalco, he came out of upper level dressage and he if you put bit pressure with two reins, which to me should mean slow down, halt,
Mhm.
come back this way, he went faster. And I went, the same thing happened to me with my very first horse ever who was off the track.
Yeah,
Every time I sort of gave a rein aid with two reins, which should be a resistance to forward, right? He went faster.
right.
And so I go, those are just simple examples of very experienced ridden horses.
Hmm.
And I consider the aids because you can't really refine those four basic aids. You break them, you don't refine them.
Hmm.
If you don't have the clarity of right rein always means turn right, left rein always means turn left, leg aid always means increase forward, bit resistance or rein resistance, which could be a halter, a bitless bridle, a leveraged bit, a snaffle bit, it doesn't matter. Rein resistance on two reins means slow down or halt or a downward transition. Like as soon as that direction, that dynamic direction from those aids is compromised, I'm like, no wonder the horse doesn't understand what you want.
Or I've seen some riders and horses that they won't go forward. The rider's constantly kicking.
Yeah, so that, to me, I laugh. I
I
go,
was-
that's like dragging your dance partner around the dance floor. It's never going to be a harmonious, pretty dance that anybody wants to watch because you've got, sort of, you're the one doing both roles,
Right.
right?
That's a good way to put it.
You're trying to ride and guide and be the forward that the horse is supposed to maintain. And it's like, it's just never going to be a pretty dance because you're taking over your partner's job.
Right.
So you're essentially stepping on each other's feet all the time. It's not graceful.
Yeah, and I mean, that habit to retrain a horse with that habit is a big deal.
But horses change really fast.
Once they finally get what
Hmm.
you're asking, yeah.
If
And
you're consistent and clear, but I go, if I'm putting rein resistance for a halt and my horse goes faster, then a half halt is out of the question.
yeah, right.
I go, if I don't have a full halt, how am I going to have a half
Do a half
halt?
halt.
Right? Or if my leg aid doesn't mean forward energy, then how am I going to give a light leg aid to just adjust the speed or
Mhm.
the tempo within any gait, like a half push versus a half halt? And so it's those four essential aids and the directions that they communicate to the horse, those get broken all the time.
Right.
And the horse goes, no, if you pull on two reins, that means go faster. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, okay, we're going to have to fix
We had to
that.
rethink that.
And that's why, my off the track thoroughbred, when I was 16, we went bolting through our neighborhood, through electric fences, forests, across roads. It was like, because it didn't occur to me that pulling on two reins would ever mean go faster, but that's exactly what thoroughbreds learn at the track.
Yep.
And I assumed, like most people who get an OTTB, well, they've been ridden. And I go, but we don't understand the type of training or
Right. They've already been that habit. It's a habit, just
it's a
like the
habit.
habits we have, and be willing to explore outside of the right and wrong box.
Yeah, because my horse wasn't wrong to speed up.
No.
it was a failure of imagination on my part that that would ever mean that. And
Right.
I had to figure out very quickly, we're going to have to change that habit. That's all it is. No judgment, not right or wrong.
Good point.
I go,
No emotional content or it's not a personal jab. It just
right.
is.
But obviously, I had zero breaks. And then somebody said, oh, well, just bend the neck and turn them. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do that to a thoroughbred, but they put their nose on your boot and haul
And
ass
they
all the
can,
same.
yep.
I go, they do not slow down or turn.
That's too funny.
Yeah. So I learned, I go, great big turns and slowly make the turn smaller. I go, if I can get that horse to turn, we can manage it.
Right.
But it was like pulling on two reins or trying to bend the neck. I was like, those did not work. And I went on a lot of really fast rides.
I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. I was glad to have that learning curve at 16. That was
Yeah.
the right time to do it. So I think what was our exploring while training horses was our topic today.
Yep.
And I think the idea of exploring, like if we just look at behavior is communication
Mhm.
from a horse, and that there's no good or bad behavior.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong,
No
good or
right or
bad.
wrong, no good or bad.
There's no
We can,
linear line that this is going to work.
right, any more than me telling you exactly how to get in your car and leave
Exactly.
your property. There's a lot of ways to do it that works. There's some ways that will never work, but we adjust and adapt as we figure it out. Like that to me is the exploring in horse training.
Right.
Because I got to know what's motivating the horse to have this habitual problem,
Hmm.
right? And if I try this strategy, how does this unique horse respond? Not that I'm giving the wrong aid, people are terrified of that, or I'm doing it wrong.
The right, wrong thing again. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I,
huge in the human mind.
yeah, that's like saying you can hold the steering wheel of your car the wrong way. I go, If you kind of get where you want to go, you probably did it fine."
Exactly.
Yeah. And we have the rule, the sort of, what is it, 2 o'clock or
10 and 2.
10 and 2,
Actually,
right?
they don't teach that anymore. They're teaching it down below,
Because
holding
of the
hands,
shoulders.
which is great for me as an Alexander teacher. That's a great concept.
Yeah. Yeah. But I go, there's effective and ineffective ways to use a steering wheel,
Hmm.
just like there's effective and ineffective strategies for training horses. But how the horse responds to any strategy I try, I have no idea.
Right.
That horse is an individual with an individual past and thoughts and
Hmm.
feelings. So it's not that simple. And I go, a lot of times when I'm sort of getting to know a horse, I feel like I'm throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. How do they respond?
Yeah, exactly.
And once I see the response I'm looking for, that's what guides my training strategy.
Right.
So instead of trying to get a horse to fit a program, I kind of have principles and concepts and things I work with, but the training strategy, the technique I use, the exercise we do is really determined by what I think is motivating the horse, if I'm not
Hmm.
wrong, and how the horse is responding dynamically to different things I'm doing.
Right.
And that's exactly how you work with people's bodies.
Hmm. We always have a goal of, and we've been taught a certain way, but I always have to be exploring and adaptable because that might not work for that person.
Yeah.
That person may just go, oh, heck no, you're not starting there.
Yeah.
And the body tells me that. It's
Yeah. Like
usually
if a,
not verbal whatsoever. It's a total communication through my hands that I can feel it.
yeah, it's same. It's like if I have a horse that every time you give a leg aid to, they rear, I go,
Yippee.
maybe I'm going to start somewhere else.
Exactly. Instead of going down the thought of this is a wrong answer.
Right.
Hmm.
I'm gonna take another tact where
Yep.
nine
That
out of
didn't work.
10,
Throw that one out
yeah, 9 out of 10
for today.
horses that have bad leg aids, I can just fix it directly, simply, very quickly. But but sometimes it doesn't work.
Exactly.
All right, we better wrap it up. And Lily is back.
Lily's timer went
I
off.
know. Her little paw. She's like, hello. It's
Hello, it's
it's
my turn.
it's cat time. So thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast. And thank you for the comments. She's like tapping my shoulder. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of Horse Geeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.